When the subject of nu metal comes up, most people's minds probably go to groups who had an enormous amount of success in the subgenre, like Korn and Limp Bizkit. While I've done videos on those bands, although I do owe you guys full detailed histories on the groups, in today's video we're going to talk about a much lesser known band that I've got an insane number of requests for, Waste Proejct. They would be fronted by a female vocalist, and one of the members would go on to open their own yoga studio. Today, let's talk about the history of Waste Proejct. The band's origins date back to Huntington Beach in 1993. Waste Proejct would be started by bassist Jeff Schartoff and frontman Roman Marisak. Schartoff had a pretty rough childhood, spending 6 months in his teen years in a psychiatric hospital, according to the Independent newspaper. Schartoff and Marisak slowly drifted apart, with Schartoff remaining the only member in the band for the time being. Waste Proejct soon went through a revolving lineup of musicians before landing on their classic lineup, which was made up of vocalist Aimee Echo, guitarist Mike Tempesta, and drummer Scott Ellis. Marisak would return sometimes to play guitar with the band though. Schartoff, Ellis, and Echo would grow up together in California, with Schartoff and Ellis actually playing together in a punk band previously. One fact you guys may not know is that the group went through a number of guitarists before Mike Tempesta joined, with 3 of the guitarists being called John. John Tempesta is Mike's brother, and you guys may know him from White Zombie. One of Waste Proeject's guitarists was named John Monty, who was from New Jersey. He recommended Mike Tempesta, who was from New York, when he left the band. Monty would leave the group because he thought they were going nowhere. Mike Tempesta was also Jerry Cantrell's guitar tech for Alice in Chains' Facelift tour in the early 90s. Jeff Schartoff would tell an interviewer, "I was looking to start this really experimental band because we do a lot of sequencing and sampling when we started. I wanted something in like the flavor of Tricky and Portishead, with Skinny Puppy type heaviness, with a tribalized rhythm and a Jane's Addiction type feel." Aimee would, however, tell a slightly different story. She would claim that their drummer Scott Ellis didn't want a female frontwoman. Aimee, for her part, had grown up listening to records while she did her homework, being into James Taylor, the Beatles, and Fleetwood Mac. Later on, she discovered new wave and punk, but Aimee didn't really think that singing was going to be a viable option in her life. But that would soon change. She attended the inaugural Lollapalooza in 1991 with Schartoff, where she saw 9 Inch Nails, Jane's Addiction, and Susie and the Banshees. It was an experience that she referred to as being the most amazing concert she'd ever been to. She would recall, "I think it started when my mom overheard me singing, and she said, 'I didn't know you could sing.' And I said, 'I can't, but I met this guy and started this thing with him. Then I lied to Jeff and told him I could sing, and he believed me.'" She would reveal that 250 men auditioned for the vocalist spot in Waste Proejct, and she kept asking the guys to give her a shot, but it fell on deaf ears. Eventually, the band soon realized they couldn't find the right guy, so they let her audition, and she got the job. Her experience singing up until this point involved doing background vocals for other groups, and Aimee would admit that she gravitated more towards male vocalists trying to copy their style, because she wasn't really a fan of female singers who did, as she referred to, the girly thing. She would, however, make 2 exceptions for female vocalists, citing Susie Sue and PJ Harvey as being one of her biggest influences. According to Krang, Aimee was actually a straight-A student in university who dropped out to front Waste Proejct. She would also become a licensed body piercer to overcome her fear of needles. She was even interviewed by the LA Times in 1994, before Waste Proejct got on a lot of people's radars, to talk about the risk associated with body piercings. Waste Proeject's influences were pretty wide-ranging, including The Cure, Tool, Portishead, Susie and the Banshees, Public Enemy, The Clash, Tom Waits, Sepultura, Slayer, and Soul Coughing. They would refer to their sound as, and I quote, "professional murder music." As for the group's name, while many, including myself, first thought of a toilet, it goes deeper than that. Schartoff would tell the Herald newspaper, "If you watch the news and really analyze it, it's bad news. That's basically what the name is about." Aimee, for her part, would draw frequent comparisons to Gwen Stefani of No Doubt, and sometimes the group would be referred to as the evil No Doubt. Schartoff would admit to the Herald newspaper that the band had contrasting songs. They had some heavier stuff, and some softer songs, admitting that they refrained from playing their softer tracks because the kids in the mosh pit would simply laugh at them. The band owed their early success to nu metal giants Korn. Aimee was working in her piercing shop, and one day Korn frontman Jonathan Davis walked in to get some work done. She also went to school with the guy who ended up becoming Korn's tour manager, and it was through him they became friends with the Deftones. They also owed their success to Korn producer Ross Robinson, who they went way back with. It was through their connections they soon landed gigs in LA on the Sunset Strip, alongside bands like Deftones, Snot, and System of a Down. Human Waste Proejct soon got the attention of an A&R man named Aaron Spackle Hawkins, who worked for the Disney-owned label Hollywood Records. According to the members, he followed the band for 3 years, and it was during this period they got offers from indie labels as well. But the members had a pretty clear vision of what they wanted to do and accomplish, and didn't really think that an indie label could help with that, so they needed to go bigger. Human Waste Proejct would sign the recording deal on June 6th of 1996 with Hollywood Records. They were supposed to sign the day before, but the members forgot about the meeting, having drunk too much champagne celebrating the record deal the night before. But Hollywood Records was a company in disarray. There was a lot of internal politics going on at the time. There were staff changes, most notably a new president came in, and soon enough a lot of the label's roster were having issues putting out their albums. Human Waste Proejct was no different, but they would hit the studio with renowned nu metal producer Ross Robinson, and they would go to Malibu at the Indigo Ranch. But the recording process was filled with a number of issues. Aimee would tell Ravi Kalan, "It was so weird. We started on Friday the 13th, we tracked 13 songs, got out on Halloween, lived through the Malibu firestorms, we had a lunar eclipse, a meteor crash which I witnessed, and Jeff cracked his head on a rock." Even the televised news reports and the fire department telling the band to evacuate still didn't really sway them. They were still in the recording studio, and it wasn't until the fire came right to their doorstep that they finally left. Their producer Ross Robinson narrowly escaped with the master tapes, with flames fanning both sides of the road as he exited the area. The band owed their stubbornness to being punk rock kids. They thought the winds were going in the opposite direction, and there was an old rumor that the local Aboriginal rituals protected the canyon from the fire. The studio they would record their album in would soon become the stuff of legends, as it was said to be haunted by groups who also recorded there like Korn, Sepultura, and Manhole. The band's debut record titled E-Lux would be delayed several times, initially set to come out in early 1997. The band, according to Kerrang, even held a record release party for their debut record E-Lux in the spring of '97, but the album would be delayed once again. It wouldn't come out till September of the same year. The initial plans were to only release the album in North America and not in Europe. It was a strange decision given that the album received a lot of positive press in Europe, but their label finally changed its mind and released it on the continent 6 months later in the spring of '98. One of the band's first big fan bases came from the UK because Kerrang magazine immediately backed the group. Kerrang would give E-Lux a 4-star review and hailed them as one of the most eclectic bands of the LA nu metal scene because they had so many different styles and moods and tempos. The magazine even went on to claim that 1998 would be the band's year, but sadly that wouldn't be the case. Human Waste Proejct did some North America dates with Deftones before heading across the pond to Europe to open shows for Coal Chamber. The band, however, grew frustrated being lumped in with nu metal acts, when by their own admission they saw themselves as a cross between Susie and the Banshees, Nine Inch Nails, and Jane's Addiction. Jeff Schartoff would tell the Herald newspaper, "We want to hit that alternative scene, but we always end up touring with heavy bands." The highlight of the band's career came in the UK when they played an Ozfest show at Milton Keynes in the summer of 1998. But not all was well regarding the band's business affairs. Hollywood Records hadn't provided enough tour support, so the band played some US shows to self-finance their European dates, including paying their own way to appear in Ozfest. During the band's Ozfest set, Aimee even asked the crowd to join in on a chant saying "F*** Hollywood Records." When the group returned to America, they were soon dropped by their label, and Mike Tempesta would tell the Tone Talk podcast that in addition to their record not getting enough support from the label and not selling well, Hollywood Records didn't want a band named Human Waste Proejct on their roster. The band would play their final show in July of 1998 at the House of Blues in LA. They would open for Sepultura. Jeff Schartoff would tell Kerrang! The following year, "I knew something wasn't completely right when we got back from doing the Ozfest in England. As soon as we got off our former record label, we had another deal ready to go, but I think it was a fork in the road for Aimee. She had already been working on other stuff, and she decided that it was best for her to drop Human Waste Proejct and start a new band, which was I thought it was the worst thing she could do." Aimee, for her part, would tell a Utah paper, "We were put on tours that were predominantly filled with macho nu metal bands. It got tiresome and I wanted a change. Human Waste Proejct left the scene just as nu metal was about to blow up in the next several years. Who knows what could have happened if the band had a good label who supported them and if they stayed together." Aimee, meanwhile, would join the post-punk group The Start, made up of Human Waste Proejct drummer Scott Ellis. Aimee, during the early 2000s, started getting into Ashtanga yoga, making yearly trips to India to study it. She would soon open up her own yoga studio in Long Beach, and she would end up marrying former Snot and current Bad Religion drummer Jamie Miller. Then in 2008 and 2009, as part of several shows that The Start did, the former members of Human Waste Proejct joined Aimee on stage to do several songs from their solo album E-Lux as part of a mini reunion. Meanwhile, Mike Tempesta, and I should have mentioned this earlier, also worked for Anthrax in the early 90s. After Human Waste Proejct would disband, he would join Powerman 5000 before he went on to work for a variety of music companies as an artist relations manager. Meanwhile, bassist Jeff Schartoff and the band's former vocalist Roman Marisak would form the band Professional Murder Music in 1998. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics you'd like to see me do, use the link in the description box below. Take care.